The hospital looked calm from the outside. Lights steady. No sirens. No movement in the street beyond the glow of traffic signals holding green for no one. Inside, the emergency department ran thin. 2 nurses had called out. 1 security guard had not shown. The charge nurse compensated the only way she could, by spreading people wider and trusting they would hold. Charts stacked. Call lights chimed and were silenced without comment. The rhythm was practiced, strained, but familiar. The woman in the far corner took the assignment without complaint. She wore standard blue scrubs, slightly faded at the seams. No jewelry. Hair pulled back tight, not styled, just controlled. Her badge identified her as a float nurse, temporary coverage. The name meant nothing to anyone on shift. She listened more than she spoke. When a trauma resident misread a monitor, she corrected the medication quietly and moved on. When a patient began to panic in triage, she knelt, spoke 3 sentences, and steadied him without drawing attention. Her movements were efficient, measured. She wasted nothing, not steps, not words. No one commented on it. Competence was common here. Silence was not suspicious. At 22:17, the ambulance bay went still. No incoming call. No notice. Just absence. The charge nurse frowned at the board. We should have had 2 by now. Someone shrugged. Maybe a pileup diverted them. The woman at the workstation marked the time on her chart without looking up. At 22:23, a dull vibration passed through the floor. Not loud enough to trigger alarms. Not sharp enough to register as an impact. Just pressure. Sustained. Like weight settling where it should not. A few heads lifted. Security laughed it off over the radio. Probably a delivery truck backing wrong. The woman reached up and turned her badge inward so the name no longer showed. She did it casually, like an old habit. No one noticed. At 22:29, the police scanner on a resident's phone crackled. Voices overlapped. Then stopped mid-sentence. The resident frowned. That's odd. The charge nurse shook her head. We don't need outside noise right now. The woman glanced toward the main entrance. Glass. Too much glass. The automatic doors stood open longer than they should before closing. The air pressure shifted each time. She moved a gurney 6 inches to the left. It cleared a corridor angle that no one else had thought about yet. A patient asked if something was wrong. No, she said. Just a busy night. Her tone was even. It was true, in a way. At 22:34, the overhead lights flickered. Not a power surge. A test. Someone checking response time. The charge nurse sighed. Facilities is going to give me gray hair. The woman did not respond. She counted the seconds between the flicker and stabilization. Too clean. Too controlled. She finished her charting, closed the file, and stood. The security desk radio crackled once. Then again. Then went silent. Someone swore. Did we lose them? Before anyone could answer, something struck the front glass. Hard. Deliberate. Conversation died instantly. A second impact followed. Louder. Closer. The woman did not flinch. She stepped away from the desk and walked toward the supply alcove, not hurried, not slow. On the way, she adjusted a curtain, narrowing a sightline from the waiting area into the main corridor. The charge nurse noticed her then. Hey, stay put. We don't know what's happening. She nodded once. Compliance without submission. From the far end of the department, a security guard ran past, breathing hard. They're blocking the street, he said. Police are pulling back. The word they hung in the air, undefined and heavy. Someone asked how many. No one answered. The woman paused near the alcove and listened. Not to voices. To absence. To what was no longer moving the way it should. She reached into the cabinet and checked what was inside. Not inventory. Access. She closed it again. Around her, panic began its slow rise, not screaming, not chaos, just the tightening of shoulders, the subtle shift of weight toward exits that might not stay open. The charge nurse started issuing instructions. Some overlapped. Some conflicted. The woman waited until the noise peaked. Then she spoke. "Move the pediatric patients away from the front corridor," she said. Quietly. It was not a request. It was not loud. Two nurses obeyed before realizing they had not been asked by the charge nurse. The woman met the charge nurse's eyes. There was no challenge in them. Just certainty. The charge nurse hesitated. Then nodded. Outside, something metallic scraped along concrete. Inside, the department rearranged itself around the woman without knowing why. They still thought she was just a nurse. They would not think that much longer. The emergency department settled into a tense imitation of order. Monitors continued to beep. 4 pumps clicked through their cycles. On the surface, nothing had changed. But movement slowed. Conversations shortened. Every sound carried farther than it should have. The woman positioned herself near the central corridor, where she could see the ambulance bay doors, the waiting area, and the service hall that led deeper into the hospital. She did not stand still. She adjusted. 1 step left. 1 step back. Always with purpose. The charge nurse was on the phone with administration. Her voice stayed calm, but her free hand gripped the counter hard enough to whiten her knuckles. "No, nothing confirmed," she said. "We just lost outside contact." The line went dead. She stared at the phone, then tried again. No signal. A resident checked his own phone. Then another. Screens showed bars, then nothing. Wi-Fi dropped next. The hospital's internal system stayed up, but it felt suddenly fragile, like a single thread holding too much weight. The woman noted the sequence. External communication first. Internal last. Intentional. A security guard returned from the front, face pale. "They've parked across the intersection," he said. "Vans. No plates." "How many?" someone asked. The guard shook his head. "Enough." The woman watched his breathing. Fast, shallow. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. "Are they watching the doors," she asked, "or the roofline?" The guard blinked. "What?" "Which one?" she repeated, calmly. "Both," he said after a moment. "I think." She nodded once. That was enough. She crossed to the charge nurse and spoke quietly, close enough that only she could hear. "We should stop using the main corridor. Move traffic through the secondary loop." "That'll slow intake," the charge nurse said. "It will control sight lines," the woman replied. A beat passed. The charge nurse exhaled. "Do it." The woman did not smile. She moved. She redirected a transport team without explanation. She closed one set of automatic doors and propped another open just enough to look accidental. She adjusted lighting in the waiting area, dimmer near the glass, brighter deeper inside. None of it drew attention on its own. Together, it shifted the department's posture from exposed to inward. A patient in a hallway bed grabbed her sleeve. "Are we safe?" She met his eyes. "Right now, yes." It was an honest answer. Carefully limited. At 22:47, a low mechanical sound came from outside. Not an engine rev, something heavier. Idling. Waiting. The woman stood still and listened. She counted again. Distance. Echo. Number of pauses between sounds. Her jaw tightened slightly. The only visible sign. A doctor approached her, irritation barely masked. Who told you to reroute my trauma patient? She did not raise her voice. I did. He stared at her badge, still turned inward. And you are? She met his gaze. The person making sure you can keep working. For a moment, it looked like he might argue. Then another impact hit the front glass. Harder than before. He turned away without another word. The woman watched him go. She did not follow. Doctors would keep doing what they knew. Her concern was flow. Angles. Time. A nurse hurried over. Security says someone's testing the side entrances. The woman nodded. Lock the north stairwell. Keep the south open. Don't announce it. Why? Because if they're listening, they'll expect symmetry. The nurse hesitated. Then did it. At 22:53, a voice came over the overhead system. Not an announcement. Just static. Then silence again. The woman closed her eyes briefly. Not in fear. In calculation. This was not a robbery. Not a protest spilling over. Too controlled. Too patient. This was containment. She moved to the nurse's station and pulled up the hospital map. Her finger traced routes, exits, choke points. She did not mark anything. She memorized. The charge nurse watched her for a long moment. You've done this before, she said quietly. The woman did not answer. Outside, the vans shifted position. Inside, the department adjusted again, following her lead without ever naming it. The early warnings were no longer subtle. Whatever was coming had already begun. And she was preparing them for it. The first official alert never came. No evacuation order. No shelter-in-place announcement. Just the slow realization that the world outside the hospital had stopped responding. Through the front glass, shapes moved with purpose. Dark clothing. Faces obscured. Not rushed. Not careless. Vehicles idled in deliberate positions, angled to block without fully sealing, enough to control movement, not enough to draw immediate escalation. Police cruisers sat farther back now. Engines running. Doors closed. Officers inside. Waiting. Inside the emergency department, tension sharpened into something brittle. A visitor tried to leave. The automatic doors opened halfway, then stopped. The man pushed harder. A security guard intervened, voice raised, hand outstretched. The visitor shoved back. The woman was already there. She placed herself between them without force, without urgency. Sir, she said, the system's cycling. Give it a moment. The man looked at her, chest heaving. They're out there. I know. Her voice was steady. It gave him something to lean on. He stepped back. The doors closed. She turned to the guard. No physical contact unless necessary, she said. It escalates faster than you think. The guard nodded, relieved to have direction. At 23:02, a hospital administrator hurried in from upstairs, breathless. We need to know what's happening, he said. The mayor's office isn't answering. The woman did not engage him. She was watching the street. Two of the vans had shifted closer together. Not blocking traffic now, blocking access. A perimeter, tightening. She spoke to the charge nurse without looking away. They're locking it down. The charge nurse swallowed. Why us? The woman paused. Because we're stable ground. The words landed heavy. Hospitals were predictable. Constrained. Full of people who could not run. At 23:06, a sharp crack echoed outside. Not a gunshot. Metal on metal. A test strike against a service gate. Several patients screamed. The woman raised her voice, not loud, but carrying. Everyone stay where you are. Staff, keep voices low. It worked. Not perfectly. Enough. She moved to the service corridor entrance. Security hesitated behind her. Hold here, she told them. If they breach, you fall back to radiology. No heroics. And you? One guard asked. She looked at him. I'll buy you time. She did not say how. The corridor lights flickered once. Then stabilized. Emergency power kicked in automatically. Someone was testing the grid, probing for weak points. The woman pressed her palm briefly against the wall, feeling vibration through concrete. Footsteps. Multiple. Coordinated. She leaned toward the nearest nurse. Start clearing this hall. Slow. Don't announce it. The nurse did not question her. A doctor approached, face pale. We can't just hide. We're not hiding, the woman said. We're shaping. Another impact hit the glass. A spiderweb crack spread, held by laminated layers. Outside, one of the figures raised a hand. The others stopped moving. Inside, the woman felt it, the shift from preparation to execution. She stepped back into the department and raised her voice just enough. Lock down the trauma bays. Move non-critical patients inward. Now. The charge nurse echoed the order. This time, no one hesitated. The street was no longer just blocked. It was controlled. And the hospital, whether it knew it or not, had entered a siege. The woman stood at the center of it, calm, calculating, already moving toward the next decision. The service corridor door shuttered once. Not forced. Tested. Security froze. The woman did not. She raised one hand, palm down. The guards stopped breathing before they realized they had. She stepped forward alone, positioning herself just off-center from the doorway. Not directly in front. Never directly in front. Another impact came. Controlled. Deliberate. Whoever was outside was measuring resistance. She leaned toward the nearest guard. When it opens, she said quietly, you step back. You do not engage. You do not argue. You move when I tell you. The guard swallowed. Ma'am. She looked at him. Not sharply. Not kindly. Simply fully. He nodded. The latch clicked. The door opened 3 inches. A voice came through the gap. Male. Calm. Amplified just enough to carry. Hospital security. We need access to the lower level. The woman stepped into view. You don't, she said. There was a pause. Not confusion. Assessment. And you are? She did not answer. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, listening, not to the voice, but to the space around it. The way sound traveled. The echo behind him. At least 3 bodies. Possibly more, holding distance. This is a medical facility, she continued. You're escalating risk with every second you stay here. Another pause. We're under orders. She nodded once. So am I. The words were simple. The effect was not. The voice tightened. You're obstructing an active operation. No, she said. I'm containing it. The door opened another inch. She did not retreat. Behind her, someone whispered her name. She ignored it. A shape moved in the gap. A shoulder. Armored. Not police issue. Her eyes flicked down. Boots. Clean. No hospital dust. They had not been waiting long. You have wounded outside, she said. If you push through this door, you create more. Inside. On record. Silence. She could feel the calculation happening. Risk versus control. Visibility versus outcome. Step back, the voice said, no longer amplified. She did not move. Instead, she reached up and pressed the door release pad. Locked it. The corridor lights dimmed another degree. Emergency protocol responding to threat containment. You don't want this inside, she said. And you don't want it messy. Another voice murmured behind the first. She caught fragments. Time, orders. She waited. The waiting mattered. Finally, the first voice returned. This isn't over. No, she agreed. It's just not here. The door handle rattled once. Then stopped. Footsteps retreated. Not fast. Controlled withdrawal. Only then did she step back. Security exhaled all at once. One guard stared at her. How did you know they'd back off? She met his eyes. Because they're professionals, she said. And professionals avoid unnecessary witnesses. The weight of that statement settled slowly. From the front of the department, shouting rose. Not panic, argument. Someone trying to force their way out. Another pressure point. The woman turned toward it immediately. Behind her, the charge nurse spoke quietly. Who are you? The woman paused. Just long enough to acknowledge the question. Right now, she said, I'm the reason this stays contained. Then she walked toward the noise, already adjusting the next angle, the next decision. The first confrontation was over. The real test was just beginning. The argument near the front entrance collapsed the moment she arrived. Not because she raised her voice. Because she did not. A man in a leather jacket stood inches from a security guard, breath hot, hands shaking. My wife's inside, he said. You don't get to hold us here. She's stable, the guard said, unsure. We're doing what we can. The woman stepped into the space between them, angled slightly, giving neither man her full body. It forced them to look past her, not at each other. She's in Bay 12, the woman said to the man. Post-op, monitored. If you push past this line, they will sedate her because her vitals will spike. That will delay her recovery. The man stared at her. How do you? Right now, she said, the fastest way to her is staying right where you are. His shoulders sagged. He stepped back. The guard looked at her like she had just pulled something out of thin air. She turned to him. Rotate positions every 10 minutes, she said. Fatigue makes mistakes. He nodded, grateful again for instruction. The department began to shift without announcement. She moved nurses in pairs instead of singles. She placed the most experienced staff at corridor bends, not at desks. She reassigned a junior resident away from triage, not because he was incompetent, but because his voice carried panic when he spoke too fast. A senior physician noticed. You're reorganizing my floor, he said, irritation thinly veiled. Yes, she replied. You don't have that authority. She met his gaze. You can override me if you want. The way she said it made him pause. And if I don't? Then in 15 minutes, she said, you'll still be able to treat patients instead of managing chaos. He watched as a stretcher passed smoothly through a corridor that had been jammed minutes earlier. As a nurse calmly de-escalated a family without calling security. As alarms quieted instead of multiplied. He said nothing more. At 23:31, the overhead lights dimmed again, this time longer. Backup generators kicked in, but not fully. Non-essential systems went dark. Hallways narrowed into pools of light and shadow. The woman adjusted instantly. "Close the west waiting area," she said. "We don't need open space. We need control." The charge nurse relayed it without hesitation now. A resident leaned in. "If this turns violent." "It won't," the woman said. "You don't know that." "I do," she replied. "Because if they wanted violence, it would have happened already." She watched the street through the glass. The vans had not moved closer. They were holding. Applying pressure without crossing a line. Containment was working. A nurse brushed past her and whispered, "You're good under pressure." The woman did not respond. Inside her chest, something tightened, not fear, not doubt. Memory. The weight of command she had put down years ago, now settling back into place like muscle memory returning without permission. She paid the cost quietly. At 23:38, a monitor alarm spiked in Bay 7. A patient crashing. The woman turned sharply, and stopped. If she went, the center would thin. Decisions would bottleneck. Control would loosen. She looked at the charge nurse. "You can handle it," she said. The charge nurse nodded, then hesitated. "Are you sure?" The woman held her gaze. "You're ready." The charge nurse moved. The patient stabilized. Control held. Outside, one of the van's doors opened briefly. A figure stepped out, raised a phone, took photos of the entrance, the windows, the staff silhouettes moving inside. The woman stepped into shadow. She was not avoiding notice out of fear. She was avoiding becoming the variable they hadn't planned for. The hospital had shifted now, not reacting, not hiding. It was being managed. And she was holding it together, one quiet decision at a time. The power failed at 23:44. Not all at once. Not dramatically. One bank of monitors went dark. Then another. The hum of the ventilation system dropped a half note, barely audible unless you were listening for it. Emergency lights flickered on, painting the corridors in a dull amber that flattened depth and erased edges. Someone swore softly. The woman was already moving. "Critical equipment only," she said, voice steady. "Shut down anything drawing unnecessary load." Facilities did not respond. Their channel was dead. A nurse looked at her, eyes wide. "We can't maintain ICU on partial." "We don't need full ICU," the woman replied. "We need 15 minutes. "For what?" She did not answer. Instead, she crossed into Bay 9, where a middle-aged man lay unconscious, blood pressure unstable. The monitor stuttered, struggling to stay alive on backup. The attending physician hovered, hands shaking just enough to matter. "If we lose this feed." "You won't," the woman said. "But you need to move." "I can't leave him." "You can," she replied. "Because if you don't, you'll lose 2 patients instead of 1. The words were not cruel. They were exact. The physician hesitated. Then stepped back. The woman took his place. She adjusted the drip manually, counting drops by eye. No display. No alarm. Just rhythm and experience. Outside, a new sound rose. Not impact this time. Voices. Shouting. The crowd had grown. Someone was stirring it, pushing agitation toward ignition. Security radio crackled to life for half a second. North side, pressure. Then silence again. The charge nurse appeared beside her. "They're pushing the crowd closer." The woman nodded. "They want noise. They want us to make a mistake." She watched the patient's chest rise and fall. Steady now. A nurse tugged at her sleeve. We lost suction in pediatrics. The woman closed her eyes for one breath. This was the cost. It always was. She stepped away from the patient and handed off the count. Maintain this rate, she said. Do not adjust unless his color changes. Then she turned and walked, fast now, but still controlled, toward pediatrics. Every step pulled her farther from the center. From the place where she could see everything, shape everything. In pediatrics, a toddler cried weakly, oxygen mask slipping. The suction unit sat dead beside the bed. The woman knelt. She checked the child's airway manually, using tools older than the building itself. Her hands were gentle. Precise. The mother watched her, terrified. Please, she whispered. I've got him, the woman said. It took longer this way. It always did. Sweat formed at her temples. Her shoulders burned. In the corridor outside, raised voices spiked. A crash. Glass? No, metal. Someone hitting a barrier. The woman finished securing the airway and stood, breathing hard for the first time that night. She had given up position. Given up oversight. And for several minutes, the hospital drifted without her. When she returned to the central corridor, she felt it immediately, the imbalance. 2 decisions delayed. 1 argument unresolved. A security guard standing in the wrong place. She corrected all 3 in under 30 seconds. But the delay had cost them. Outside, the vans had moved closer. Not rushing. Advancing. The siege was tightening. And for the first time, the woman allowed herself to feel the weight of it, not fear, but responsibility. The quiet knowledge that every choice now carried consequence, and that she could not save everything. She straightened her posture and stepped back into the light. The next phase would require more than containment. It would require command. The radio came back to life without warning. A burst of static, then a voice, strained, professional, trying to sound in control. Hospital command, this is perimeter lead. We have multiple unknowns, possible coordinated action. Requesting status. The charge nurse looked at the handset, then at the woman. The woman took the radio from her without asking. This is interior, she said. You're late. A pause. Not offense. Surprise. Identify yourself. Not relevant, she replied. Your perimeter is collapsing because you're holding too wide. Pull your units back to hard cover. Establish inner and outer rings. You're bleeding attention. Silence again. This time longer. The woman continued, voice steady, unhurried. You have 2 pressure points, North Service Drive and East Pedestrian Access. North is a feint. East is where they'll test entry once the crowd noise peaks. How do you know that? The voice asked. Because if I were them, she said, that's where I'd go. The channel went quiet except for breathing. Then another voice came on. Older. Calmer. Authority carried without effort. Interior, repeat your last. She did. Word for word. Who's advising you? The second voice asked. No one, she said. You're behind the curve. I'm pulling you forward. A beat passed. Then, all units, adjust per interior guidance. The order went out. Around the hospital, movement changed. Sirens repositioned. Engines cut. Boots hit pavement in tighter formation. From inside, the shift was almost imperceptible, but the woman felt it. The tension outside redistributed, no longer pressing in one direction. The charge nurse stared at her. They're listening to you. The woman handed the radio back. They're listening to outcomes. A loud crack sounded outside, followed by shouting, then confusion. The crowd surged, then stalled as barriers redirected them away from the east access point. It worked. Inside, staff felt it before they understood it. The pressure eased slightly. Breathing slowed. Movements became deliberate again. A security guard leaned close. What if they push harder? They won't, the woman said. They've lost timing. She moved back to the nurse's station and pulled up the external camera feed, grainy, partial, but enough. She watched as one of the vans repositioned, then stopped. Doors stayed closed. The administrator returned, pale and shaken. Who authorized law enforcement to take direction from? She looked at him. Sit down. He did. Another transmission came through the radio. Interior, the calm voice said, we have confirmation. The group is disengaging. No breach. The woman closed her eyes for a second. Not relief. Release. A tactical vehicle rolled into view through the glass. Not aggressive. Controlled. A figure stepped out, uniform crisp, posture unmistakable. He scanned the building, then the staff inside. His gaze found the woman. They held eye contact for a brief moment. No salute. No words. He gave a single nod. She turned away before anyone could notice. Orders continued to flow, now from outside, properly aligned. The siege unwound the same way it had tightened, slowly, deliberately, without spectacle. The woman returned to charting. Her hands were steady again. The first sign it was over came quietly. Not from cheering. Not from an announcement. From movement returning to normal speed. Outside, engines shut down one by one. Doors opened. People stepped out without urgency. Weapons stayed low, then disappeared from view entirely. The crowd thinned, confusion replacing agitation as the pressure that had held them in place released without explanation. Inside, the emergency department exhaled. Someone laughed, too loudly, then stopped themselves. A nurse leaned against a wall, eyes closed, just for a second. The charge nurse checked the board and realized, with faint disbelief, that no one had been lost. No patients harmed. No staff injured. No breach. The woman stood near the supply alcove again, where she had started. She checked vitals. Signed off on handovers. Returned equipment to where it belonged. She did not watch the front doors. A tactical commander entered through the main corridor, flanked by two officers who scanned as they walked. He moved with restraint, as if aware he was stepping into someone else's domain. The administrator rushed to meet him. We're relieved you're here. We had a situation. I know, the commander said. His eyes moved past the administrator. They settled briefly on the woman. She felt it, even without looking. He approached her slowly, stopping at a respectful distance. His voice stayed low. You held them off. We held, she corrected, still focused on her chart. He accepted it. You gave orders. She paused, then finished writing. I gave structure. The commander nodded. He did not ask who she was. He did not ask where she learned it. He already knew enough not to. Outside, the last van pulled away. The hospital lights brightened as full power returned. Systems rebooted. Monitors stabilized. The crisis had ended not with force, but with alignment. The commander turned to leave. Before he did, he spoke once more, quiet, almost private. If you ever need. She cut him off gently. I won't. He gave a thin smile. Respect, not disappointment. When he was gone, the department filled with the low murmur of aftermath, questions, speculation, incomplete stories already forming. The woman stepped away from the center. The siege was over. And no one had thought to ask her name. The hospital returned to protocol, but not to normal. Paperwork multiplied. Administrators gathered in tight clusters, speaking in lowered voices. Maintenance crews inspected doors and glass, photographing damage that would later become reports and insurance claims. Inside the emergency department, staff moved with a lingering caution, as if the walls might shift again if they trusted them too much. The woman finished her charting at 1:12. She signed the last note, reviewed it once, and closed the file. The system logged her out automatically. She did not log back in. A nurse approached her, younger, eyes still bright with adrenaline. "They're saying this might have been something bigger," she said. "Like, planned." The woman nodded. "It was. Do you think they'll come back?" "No," she replied. "They got what they needed." The nurse hesitated. "What was that?" The woman met her gaze. "Information." The nurse frowned, unsettled, then moved on. The charge nurse found her near the lockers. She looked exhausted now that she could afford to. "Administration wants statements," she said. "They're asking who was directing things." The woman took off her gloves slowly and disposed of them. "Tell them the system held." "That won't satisfy them." "It will," the woman said. "Eventually." The charge nurse studied her. "You could say more." "I could," the woman agreed. "It wouldn't help." A silence settled between them. Not awkward. Acknowledging. The charge nurse spoke again, quieter. "You kept us steady." The woman nodded once. Not denial. Not acceptance. Just acknowledgement. In the hallway beyond, two police officers spoke to a security supervisor. One gestured toward the emergency department, then shook his head, disbelief clear even from a distance. No one approached her. Outside, barriers were removed. Streetlights resumed their ordinary rhythm. The city reclaimed the block as if nothing unusual had occurred. The woman changed out of her scrubs in the locker room. Her clothes underneath were plain. Practical. The kind that did not ask to be remembered. She checked her phone for the first time that night. No messages. No missed calls. That was deliberate, too. Before leaving, she paused at the nurse's station and adjusted a stack of charts that had shifted during the night. Straightened them. Aligned edges. A small thing. A final correction. She signed out at the desk and clipped her badge off. For a moment, the name faced outward again. No one noticed. The sky was beginning to lighten when the day shift arrived. Not bright yet. Just a thin gray line above the buildings, enough to soften the edges of the night. The hospital looked unchanged from the outside, windows intact, doors open, routine resuming. Inside, the morning staff sensed something without being told. Voices stayed lower. Movements were careful. The charge nurse from the night shift gave report with more detail than usual, pausing once or twice as if weighing whether to say more. She did not. The woman stood at the back of the group, arms folded loosely, listening. Her posture was relaxed now, but not careless. She waited until the handoff was complete before stepping forward. "Bay 12 needs labs redrawn at 8, she said. "Pediatrics in 3 had a rough night. Keep the lights low." The day charge nurse nodded, absorbing it without question. That was enough. The woman retrieved her bag from the locker room and walked the long corridor toward the staff exit. The building hummed again, machines running at full power, phones ringing, stretchers rolling with the ordinary urgency of daylight. At the exit, she paused. Through the glass, she could see the street. Cleaned. Reset. No sign of the perimeter that had held it so tightly hours before. A sanitation truck passed. A bus stopped, doors opening with a hiss. Life continuing. She stepped outside and let the door close behind her. No one followed. Across the street, a man in plain clothes leaned against a vehicle, pretending to check his phone. He looked up as she exited. Their eyes met briefly. He gave the smallest nod. She did not return it. She adjusted the strap of her bag and walked down the block, blending into the early morning crowd, another worker heading home after a long shift, unremarkable, unnoticed. Behind her, the hospital resumed its role as if nothing had happened. No commendations were issued. No names recorded. No stories told correctly. And that was how she wanted it. The city did not know who had held the line that night. It did not need to.